Good morning. My name is Mark Levine. I am the Deputy Director of the New York State Association of Counties. It is my pleasure to welcome you to a webinar this morning on training for pension credits. On behalf of our President, Jack Marin, and our Executive Director, Stephen Aquario, I want to thank you for joining us this morning for this webinar. Locally elected and appointed officials do not have set workday schedules. So in order to receive pension credits, they must complete a record of activities or ROA form and submit it to the State Comptroller's office. During this morning's webinar, two representatives of the Comptroller's office will review what is required of employers, elected officials, and appointed officials. The regulation requires a standard workday and reporting resolution for elected and appointed officials. We will cover how to complete this document and why. This webinar will address the requirements for meeting NYCRR Regulation 315.4 and how to use a local official's ROA to report and adjust service credits. This morning, all attendees will be on mute. If you have a question, please submit it in the chat area of your webinar panel on the right side of the screen. After the panelists are done their presentations, we will take up all the questions in a Q&A section of the presentation. Again, we thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce our two speakers from the Comptroller's office. Tiffany Fredericks. Tiffany began her career with the Office of the State Comptroller in 2007 and has spent the last 4 years of state service with the Pension Integrity Bureau. The Pension Integrity Bureau is dedicated to upholding the integrity of the pension system and verifying that service credit is reported properly for elected and appointed officials. Marcia Miles began her career with the Office of the State Comptroller in 2009 and has spent the last year of service with the Pension Integrity Bureau. The Bureau, as I just mentioned, is dedicated to upholding the integrity of the pension system and verifying that service credit is reported properly for elected and appointed officials. It is my pleasure again to turn this program over to Tiffany and Marcia. Thank you both for joining us this morning, and we appreciate you taking your time and expertise to train our county officials. Tiffany.
Mark, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming today and joining us to learn a bit more about retirement reporting for elected and appointed officials. Marcia here with me. Her and I have, worked in PIB together for a short time now, and we absolutely love working with elected and appointed officials. It is a very important bureau within the Office of the State Comptroller, and we are going to give you the ins and outs of the regulation. And we are happy to work with you going forward with any questions or concerns that you might have. Next slide, Kate. So this is our agenda for today. We are going to discuss the new requirements of the regulation, how to complete a standard workday and reporting resolution for your elected and appointed officials, how to determine a standard workday, how to create and calculate a record of activities, how to determine if you have officials that are timekeepers, and how to report service credit for your officials. Next slide. These are some terms that we are going to use throughout the presentation. Record of activities, we call an ROA, and this is a 3-month record of work duties that are performed throughout those 3 months, and we'll get into some more detail on that in a bit. The standard workday, this one we will talk in detail about, but overall, it's if a position were to be full-time, how many hours in a day would that position, would that person need to work in that position? And then the standard workday and reporting resolution for elected and appointed officials. This is a form that we provide to all employers' offices. We do simplify this by just calling it a resolution. We are aware that most municipalities deal with a number of resolutions on a monthly basis. Because our office only has the one, we simply call it resolution. Next slide. Regulation 315.4 has been in effect since the 70s, okay? Back then, some of the requirements were a little bit simpler than they are today. Effective August of 2009, we changed many requirements of the regulation, which is what we'll discuss today. And then the regulation was amended once more in August of 2015, okay? So the new requirements are current here, where officials are required to keep a 3-month ROA, okay? In years prior to 2009, a 1-month ROA was required. So if you are an official that works within the municipality and will be handling these duties, you may find in record keeping that you'll find some 1-month ROAs on file. They are valid for that time, okay? So continue to keep those on file. Individual ROA results are now required. Each official must create their own ROA. ROAs must be kept on file for 30 years. Prior to 2009, the status quo was for 10 years, okay? We are now at 30 years because most state government and local government employees tend to work an average of 30 years prior to retirement. So we want to verify that these folks still have their ROAs on file at their time of retirement, okay? Resolutions must be publicly posted for a minimum of 30 days. That public posting can happen in a few different areas. We will talk about those areas in a bit. And after that 30-day posting period, those resolutions and then the affidavit of your posting must be submitted to the retirement system. This submission can look one of two ways. You must either mail the original resolution to our office. Our staff will data enter and review that resolution. Or your board clerk or secretary contact type can use Retirement Online to data enter that resolution right there at the municipality, and that is in lieu of sending in the original resolution. The amended change in August of 2015 is that timekeepers are no longer required to be listed. The reason for this is that the employer's office really handles reviewing hours worked and standard work days, and they report service credit based on actual time worked for their timekeepers. Okay, failure to comply with this regulation will result in suspension of service credit for your members. Okay, so if our office has requested a resolution or has requested adjustments to service credit, if we do not receive the information by the due dates that we put forth, we will have to suspend your members. Keep in mind, if that does happen, once compliance is met and we have received what we have requested from you, we can certainly lift those suspensions, okay? Next slide, Kate. So this is our form, okay? This is the standard workday and reporting resolution form, and you will notice it is RS 2417A, okay? If your municipality has more than 3 elected officials and more than 3 appointed officials, you would attach Form B to this, which is a continuation form. So it looks slightly different, but all of the columns are still there, okay? You'll notice here there is a lot of information to fill out. The bottom section is the language needed for the meeting minutes, okay? So if you were to submit just this form to our office, this is acceptable, okay? We will use this information to data enter it. It includes the date of the meeting. It includes the name of the employer, the date in which the clerk is signing the resolution, and then there's an area at the bottom for the affidavit of posting, okay? This affidavit is certifying that you have publicly posted this resolution for a minimum of 30 days. And then there are 3 areas in which you can post it. Choose one, take all 3, that's up to you. I usually say wherever you typically publicly post your resolutions, that is fine to do this in the same spot, okay? You will notice on the right-hand side, there is an area for the seal. The employer's seal must be on that form when it is mailed into us. If the employer's office is deciding to data enter this information using Retirement Online, this form still must be filled out, but it may be kept on file at the municipality, okay? Next slide. So these are all of the things that are listed in those boxes on the resolution. This is about each of your officials, okay? So the first and last name of your official, the last 4 digits of their social, and their NYCRR's ID. Now, when you publicly post this resolution, the social and the NYCRR's ID must be redacted. It is private and personal information, okay? So you can, however you would redact information on a resolution, that's how you can go ahead and do that. If you are to mail the original to our office, we need to have that information on there so that we can find these members, okay? Next is the official's title, okay? That is going to be the actual title that they were appointed to or elected to. Next is the official's current term of office. So your officials will be listed with their current term. The meeting date of the resolution, it must be passed within those term dates, okay? If the meeting is passed prior to the start of the term or after the end of the term, we will have to reject the resolution, okay? If you have an official that does not have a specified term of office, generally we see this with appointed officials that are appointed by the board for a certain position, you would then use the term of office of the elected official that appointed this person, okay? So if it's a board member, you can use the term of the board, okay? The next column is for the standard workday. It must be a minimum of 6 hours and a maximum of 8 hours. If the standard workday on this form does not fall within that 6 to 8 hours, we will have to reject the resolution. Next is the ROA result. If your official has an ROA on file, that box must have a number in it, okay? That is going to be the calculation result from the ROA, and we'll talk about how to calculate that in a bit. If your official has never submitted a record of activities to your office, you are going to check them as not submitted, and then you're going to leave that ROA result blank because they don't have an ROA, okay? Next is going to be the official's pay frequency. This is a new column on our form, and it's very handy for both the employer's office and for us. In Retirement Online, our new system, when you data enter the resolution details, once the ROA result and the payroll frequency have been entered, the system will actually tell you exactly how to report service credit for your officials, okay? So it takes that breakdown of the payroll frequency, it multiplies out and then divides out the ROA result over your either 12 months or biweekly, quarterly, that type of thing. If you have an official that is a tier 1 member, you must check them as a tier 1 member. These folks do not have to complete an ROA, okay? The reason for this is that their service credit is calculated very differently than the rest of the tiers. Therefore, they are not required to have an ROA on file, but we do still need to track them as an elected or appointed official. So they are required to be listed on the resolution and with their current term of office, but the only other information you need to list is that tier 1 checkbox, okay? And again, use page 2 if you have more than 3 each of elected or appointed, okay? Next slide, please. So this is a view of Retirement Online, and this is the dashboard. This is typical of the board clerk or secretary contact type. Keep in mind, in the notifications area and the My Cases area, you certainly might see some information there, okay? The information that is going to populate there is not simply only for elected and appointed. It's going to be a range of information for all of your employees, okay, or even some employer issues. If you have any questions about things that pop up there, click in there, take a look at it, see if there's any contact information. If you need contact numbers, you can certainly call our help desk and they will be able to assist you with that. Where I want to draw your attention to is the I want to box. And within this box, next slide, please, Kate. In this box, there is a link for Submit Resolution for Official, okay? If the right contact type is in here and wants to data enter the resolution, this is where they're going to go, okay? Next slide, please. And this is where it brings you. This is our EOR search page. EOR is Elected Appointed Official Resolution, okay? And here you would enter in the location code and the retirement system, which almost always is ERS. Very rarely do folks have PFRS members, which is our police and fire. But if you happen to have one of those titles that need to be on a resolution, you would need to use that in the drop down to populate, okay? Once you have your location code and your retirement system entered, you are going to click your search button. You'll notice here you have a search by employee box, okay? So this would be helpful to those employers that have a lot of elected and appointed officials. If you are a municipality that only has a few, okay, when you do your search, you're going to see all of your people here. But if you have a lot of ENA titles, you can certainly use that search function to kind of narrow down and find one person, okay? When you click search, you'll have a list of members populate here at the bottom of your screen, okay? And then you see over to the right, there's a view and an add button. If your official has previously been listed on a resolution, you will be able to view that entry by clicking the view button. You will know because it will be a blue link, okay? Keep in mind when we had our conversion from the old system to the new system, we did have some resolution entries that actually did not come over. It is still in our read-only legacy system, so it's still accessible for our purposes, but you may not see it here. If you question whether a resolution has been received, please just call our office and we can verify that for you. For every member that is listed here, the add button will be highlighted in blue. You can add a resolution for every official listed here, okay? If you come to this screen and you search and you don't find the members that are listed on your resolution, that means we need to do a job code change, okay? If you are on enhanced reporting within the retirement system, Retirement Online, you have access now to change job codes. If you are still using our legacy system, our bureau can do those job code changes for you. Generally speaking, when we have job code changes, it's really once and then the system has been updated and you shouldn't have that problem again. Going forward, to make sure that your folks are listing properly on this screen, you want to make sure that you are using the proper job code. Elected officials, you're going to use the elected job code, and appointed officials, you're going to use the appointed job code. This will help us cut out that step of having to go in and change those job codes over, okay? If you are enrolling your members and you question what they should be, feel free to give our office a call if they're elected and appointed, or if it's a different type of job code and you want some general information, you can call our help desk, okay? So again, if you have any job code changes that need to be made, reach out to our office by phone or email, and we will work on that right away for you, okay? Next slide, please. When should a resolution be passed? This is probably one of our biggest questions that we get. Okay, anytime a brand new official begins their very first term of office, they're going to need to be listed on a resolution, okay? They do get the proper amount of time to complete their ROA. We'll go over a schedule of due dates so you know how long to wait to list that person for the first time on a resolution. Okay, and then when you have an official that is starting a subsequent term of office, right, they're reelected, they're reappointed, they need to be listed on a resolution again because their information is changing. That information would be the term of office, okay? They may still use the same ROA. We'll get into some details on that in a bit. So that doesn't always mean that they have to create a new ROA for each term of office, but they do need to be listed on a resolution for each new term of office. If you have an official that submits a new ROA, they need to be on a resolution, even if it's in the middle of a term of office. So if they were previously listed on a resolution with their current term, and then halfway through that term, they decided they needed to do a new ROA, they will be listed on the resolution, same term of office, but the new ROA result, okay? And then anytime a standard workday is changed, this is really few and far between. Generally, we would really only see this if a part-time job went to a full-time job or a full-time job was brought down to a part-time job, but usually standard workdays do remain the same, okay? Next slide, please. Determining the standard workday, okay? Every title must have a standard workday. This means whether they are a member of the system or not, okay? The reason for this is because if you have a position being held by a non-member, okay, and then they decide to move on, they go somewhere else, you hire somebody else for that position and they are a member, that standard workday must be set already so that your payroll unit knows how to report them for salary and service within the first month of them being hired, okay? Most often we find that municipalities already have standard workdays set for their officials. If you go into office, you realize that, hey, standard workdays haven't been set, start working on that. That way there, it's done and taken care of, okay? The standard workday is used to calculate an ROA result, all right? So we use that when we have total hours, we divide it by the standard workday to get an average days worked per month. And when you have your typical employees, right, your timekeepers, that standard workday is also used for the calculation of service credit. So for that, it would be each month, the total hours in the month is divided by the standard workday. So this is really, a payroll thing. So if you question standard work days and really how they're used, we can certainly help you figure that out in more detail. The standard workday we had mentioned must be between 6 and 8. So it can be in increments of 0.25, anywhere from 6 to 8. For instance, myself, I have a standard workday of 7.5 hours because I do not get paid for my lunch. 7.5 hours a day is what I work, and that lends me to a full-time service credit. Okay. When you are setting the standard workday for elected and appointed officials, you are going to use our resolution form, the RS 2417A. And for all of your other employees, right, all of the other titles that you hold, highway, this is more county. So basically every title that is in your municipality needs a standard workday, whether they're a member or not. And you're going to use the RS 2418. All of the forms that I am mentioning, I failed to bring this up, all of the forms I am mentioning are included in the NYCRR's ENA forms and handouts that is attached here in the meeting, okay? So if you need copies of those, you can download that PDF, or you can visit our website where all of this information is also listed. Next slide. Okay, so what is a record of activities? So this is going to be helpful for most of you that are here that are an elected or an appointed official who either are starting out their very first term of office, or maybe subsequent term, or maybe a refresher by being here. So let's talk in detail about what an ROA is, okay? So it's a 3-month log of duties, all right? So it's hours in, so you do start and end times, and you include the duties that you've done. Okay, we use this to determine service credit. So we call this an average days worked. So on average, whatever the result is the amount of days that you work in a month, okay? It is good for up to 8 years. So if you have an annual term of office, you can use your first ROA for 8 years, 8 terms of office. If you have a 4-year term of office, you can use your ROA for 2 terms, okay? And this is providing that your duties and your hours do not change substantially. If you find, year 2 that you are now doing a lot more work than you did in year 1, do a new ROA. If you realize in year 3 that, hey, you know what, somebody else has taken over some of my duties, I'm not working nearly as much as I used to, do a new ROA, okay? Nobody wants to lose out on service credit, but, we want this to be as accurate as possible. So if your duties and your hours change, whether up or down, you must create a new ROA so that it's an accurate representation of time worked, okay? If you would choose to continue using your ROA for the 8 years, with each new term of office, you are going to sign a recertification of record of activities. Again, this is in your handouts, okay? So that you would sign this at the beginning of your term of office if you are recertifying to the prior ROA. If you recertify to your prior ROA, you must be listed on a resolution with the new current term of office and the same ROA result as the prior resolution. That is our indication that you have recertified to your ROA, and we will just verify that service credit is still being reported properly, okay? Let's see here. We talked about the rest of this, so we can go ahead and move on, Kate. Okay, so this is a sample ROA, and we are now providing this. It's a template. We're providing this to all officials. That is right on our website. It is a Word document that can be downloaded to your desktop. It is interactive. So when you open this up, you have one page, and you will notice at the top you have the name, title, and the employer. So this information is required on any version of a record of activities that you use. Keep in mind, it does not need to look like this. This is just a tool that we are providing you. If you choose to have your ROA detailed out on an Excel sheet or on blank Google calendars, or if you are just writing it down in a workbook and you are going to photocopy that and send it to us, as long as it's legible, it includes your duties and it includes your start and end times, okay? Kate, can you advance one slide and then I'll have you go back? So I want to blow this up a little bit so you can see some sample entries that this is a level of detail that we are looking for. So you'll see that this official had 3 entries for January 7th, and they have start and end times, and then they total in their hours here, okay? This is an extremely part-time official, right? So they only have a couple of duties per day, and they're adding in this information. This can also be used for full-time officials, all right? If you have the clerk to the legislature, okay? And they are full-time. January 7th, you may have a start time of 8 o'clock, an end time of 4 o'clock. Your total hours will be 8. And in your activity box, you are just going to write high level, the activities that you did for the day, okay? I say high level for a lot of this because we don't necessarily need to know the names and the addresses of the people you've spoken to and the sites that you have visited, right? But if you were doing site visits, write site visits. If you were in a meeting, write meeting. If you were taking phone calls or returning emails, it can be that simple, but the detail is just what we're interested in. We don't want to see a start and end time of 8 to 4 with no extra information, okay? Keep in mind the word office hours. While you may list that, we also need an idea of what you do with office hours, okay? So if we receive an ROA that we have questions on with the duties that are listed, we'll just reach out to you. Kate, can you please go back one slide? Wonderful. So you'll see here again, we have our start and end times there, and the hours column is manual. So you're going to calculate your start and your end times, and then at the end, you have a update total button. All right, there it is going to update the total in the hours column for you. Okay, so this is helpful to those folks that are reviewing the ROAs to make sure that the hours are calculated properly. When we get this in our office, we are going to manually calculate everything again, just to verify that everything was added correctly, okay? At the end of this, there's an attestation for the official to sign, okay? The most important thing to mention, if any of your officials have missed time due to being out sick, the office being closed for holidays, you've gone on vacation with your family for a week, if you miss days in your ROA that you would typically be in the office, you must extend your ROA. If you don't, you are potentially missing out on service credit. Okay, so if you miss a total of 7 days in your 3-month ROA, we need you to add a 4th month and add the first 7 working days to account for that time that was missed. Okay, so the little blurb here at the bottom of this template is letting you know to extend your ROA if you have missed any time. Okay, you are then going to sign and date it. Any ROA that is not done on this using this template, but in a different format, also must include a signature and a date, okay? If that information is not on there and we receive it, we may have to reject it. If that information is not on there and OSC comes out to audit your municipality, you will be cited for that information, okay? So if you currently have ROAs on file, and maybe they're a couple years old, they've been there, just go over those ROAs and make sure they have all of the required information, okay? If you are seeing that ROAs are they've not been done properly, they've not been signed, they don't have the required information, have a conversation with that official that they may need to submit a new valid ROA, okay? You can jump ahead 2 slides now, Kate. Wonderful, thank you. This is the recertification form that I mentioned, okay? So it is pretty basic. You are going to, if you're going to recertify to your ROA, you're going to add in your name here, stating that you certify that you completed the 3-month ROA for the term that began on, and you're going to list that term of office that you started your ROA in, okay, for my position as, and you're going to enter in your title. At the bottom there, it's going to say my current term begins on and ends on, okay? So what we want to see on file is one of these recertification forms for every term of office that you have recertified your ROA for. Next, the member is going to sign it, date it, and add in their location code, okay? If your review of your retirement system records does not show this recertification on file, get one done, okay? I do not suggest backdating recertifications, but you can use this form and you can have this member write on the bottom here in this blank space that this ROA was also good for prior terms of office, okay? The reason for this is because, again, audit purposes. You want to make sure these things are on file so you don't get cited in the event of an audit. We do not need these forms. There is a note here at the bottom to the employer. These forms are to be kept on file within the municipality unless you receive a request from us to supply them, okay? Next slide, Kate. So this is the schedule of due dates that I had mentioned, okay? So I want you to worry a little less about the actual dates that are in here and more about the day 1, day 150, and day 180, okay? On day 1, your official either begins a brand new term of office or a subsequent term of office. They then have 150 days from the start of their term to either complete their first ROA or recertify to their ROA. And then they have 30 more days up to day 180 to actually submit that ROA to your office, okay? What's helpful about this is a lot of employers just don't know when to mark their officials as not submitted, right? If your officials are not submitting their ROA to you for whatever reason, they don't want to, they don't feel they need to, maybe they're having issues with their ROA and they don't know what they're doing, that 180-day mark is going to be the time in which you prepare your resolution and you check them as not submitted if you have not received their ROA, okay? The same goes for the recertification. If you have not received the recertification by day 180, you'll mark them as not submitted, okay? This not submitted checkbox is our prompt to reach out to the member and request that ROA, okay? So there are dates in here. It kind of goes by county, town, and village. So we have different election seasons, right? So this is just kind of an idea. This gets updated yearly. And this is an idea of about the time frame in which you should be receiving those ROAs from your members. Okay, next slide, please. So now let's talk about some appropriate time to list on the ROA. Okay, answering phone calls. Anytime you are answering phone calls, if it's work related, you want to write it down. Okay, we realize that a lot of you folks are going to have working time outside of the office, right? So if you're home and you're eating dinner and you get a phone call and it's business and you take that phone call and you're on the phone for 10, 15 minutes, write that down on your ROA. While that one phone call doesn't seem like a whole lot, in regards to service credit, every minute really adds up. So it's very important to add all of that, okay? Any municipality sponsored events. So if your municipality is putting on an event and you are maybe there to help set up and break down, or you are there to give a speech, or you're there in your official capacity, that information can be listed, but within reason, okay? We are aware that events sometimes go on for hours and hours. We really don't care to see an 8-hour chunk of time for an event, but if so be reasonable in the amount of time that you're listing on your ROA. Discussing issues with your constituents outside of the office, right? So you're at the grocery store and folks are coming up to you and asking what happened at the last board meeting. And you wind up, talking for, again, 10 or 15 minutes. Keep a mental note of that. Write that down on your ROA because that time counts. It's work related. Okay. Attending board and committee meetings. So a lot of folks, their job is a board member, right? So that's what they're doing is attending board meetings. So the majority of their ROA will be meetings. But then you have folks that need to attend meetings for maybe they're, speaking to a report or giving a speech for the meeting. If they are there in their official capacity and it's work related, it can be added to the ROA. Preparing for meetings. So your board members, right, they need to review and research, and then after the meeting, they might need to do a little bit of more review and research. All of that information can be added, okay? And then community activities. This kind of goes into, the sponsored events. If your community is doing something, you have everybody coming out, it's a big shindig. If your official is there in their official capacity, they can certainly list that information. But if that official is going out with their family to enjoy that community event and just kind of be there as a citizen, you would not want to add that to the ROA, okay? So this leads us to the governing board. When the board is passing the resolution, they must also be reviewing the ROAs. It means every entry and time listed, okay? So it's a second set of eyes on the ROA. They are verifying that the entries are appropriate, okay? That they are job related and that the hours listed are, relevant to the duties that are being listed. The board must exclude anything that's not job related, okay? If they are finding things on the ROA that shouldn't be there, the board is required to remove those, okay? The ROA would then be recalculated and be decided on by the board, okay? Next slide, please. Now we have some inappropriate time, okay? So our very first one here, on call. We have quite a few titles that are on call 24/7, but we can't allow 24-hour blocks of time on the ROAs, right? That doesn't really equate to service credit. But if you are on call and you get called out to an event and it takes you 3 hours or it takes you 20 minutes, that time is allowed, okay? So just verify that when you are on call that you're only listing the time in which you are actually going to work while you're on call. Time attending campaign events, political party rallies, and candidate events are not allowed, no politics, okay? That's pretty plain and simple. If we see an ROA that comes into our office and it has political information on there, we will strike it off, okay? So we do ask the board to do the same. Board and committee meetings for private organizations. We often see board members that are, board members on multiple boards, okay? So when reviewing this ROA or when completing your own ROA, keep in mind that it is only for meetings for your municipality, okay? Socializing after your meetings. So when you are, the gavel hits, you're done with your meeting, you're all walking out, and then you kind of stop, right? And you kind of chit chat with your folks that are around you. That's all still part of the meeting. My rule of thumb is when you leave the meeting room doors, the meeting is over. If you are going to go down the street to the restaurant and have a late dinner with your constituents or your other board members, that really, that would be more socializing and less part of a meeting. So when you leave those meeting room doors, really that should be the end of your meeting, okay? Personal volunteer work, we see this pretty often. If you are an official and you are going to do volunteer work under the official capacity of your title, or you've been asked to go volunteer your time by your municipality, that's allowed. But if you're going down to the local soup kitchen with your family to kind of do some community service, that information is not allowed to be listed. So very fine line there. So just make sure that you're being true and honest to yourself with this stuff, okay? And then services not paid for by the municipality. We use wedding ceremonies in this example because sometimes justices will, officiate weddings while they're in the courthouse, but then over the weekend, their best friend's daughter is getting married and they are there to officiate the wedding. Rule of thumb is if the municipality is not paying you for the work that you're doing, you should not list it on the ROA, okay?
Tiffany, do you want to speak about appropriate time for education?
That is a wonderful idea, Marcia. Okay, so when it comes to training classes, right, we are aware that many officials need to attend trainings, especially for brand new officials, right? You're right now attending a training, learning all about being an official, okay? If the training that you are attending is a yearly training, you have to go every single year, we will take that time and divide it out by 12 months. The reason for this is because if we leave it in the 3-month chunk of time, it is going to really boost up your service credit in that 3 months for 8 years. And that's not exactly accurate or fair, okay? If you are attending this training once and never again, it actually gets removed from the ROA, okay? So a way to really avoid the confusion of training could be to remove those days and count it as a day off, okay? Extend your ROA by a working day so that it's more accurate of time worked, okay? Anything else I should add to that, Marcia?
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Wonderful. Great bringing that up. Thank you. Kate, you can advance the slide. So failure to submit an ROA, this is what we call member non-compliance, okay? The start of this is the employer's office listing the official on a resolution as not submitted, right? You've gotten to your 180-day mark, you don't have an ROA, you don't have a recertification form, go ahead and list them as not submitted, okay? What we will then do is send out a letter, and that letter is going to explain to the official what an ROA is, why it's important, and to please send it in to us when it's completed, okay? If we get that ROA within the due date, we're going to calculate it. We're then going to send a letter to the employer's office, let the employer's office know what the ROA result is, request a resolution to be passed by the board, and request adjustments to service credit if they're needed. If we don't get that ROA by the first due date, keep in mind, we give these officials 4 months for this initial letter, 4 months to complete it and mail it in to us. That gives them plenty of time to do their 3 months, extend it if they need to, and mail it to our office, okay? If we don't get it by that due date, we then send out a certified letter threatening suspension of membership. That second letter gives them another 4-month due date, okay? If they don't reach out, if they don't get back to us by that 4 months, we then send a final notice to them that they have been suspended for their service credit with that municipality, okay? If that does happen, the employer's office actually gets CC'd on all of these letters so that you are aware that we're attempting to get that ROA for your office, okay? If you get the ROA from the member, reach out to us. Make sure that we've also gotten it, because there are many times where the officials will just submit it to the clerk's office and then we never see it. we end up suspending the member unaware that they've submitted it to you, okay? If we suspend any of your officials, you must continue to report them for salary and days worked, okay? So the salary is going to be true salary, whatever they are getting paid, you report. And then when it comes to days worked, service credit, you can report 1 day worked per month, okay? Because you don't have an accurate basis to report them. It's better to, when you have to submit adjustments, to increase service credit than to be reporting them as full-time and then have to rip away service credit, okay? Go ahead to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is a very handy calculator that is on our website, and this is to calculate the ROA result. Kate, you can hit the button 4 times, please. One more. So when you are calculating an ROA, what you want to add here is the total hours, and in this situation, we're going to use 100. The number of months used to calculate the ROA, which is the minimum of 3. Keep in mind that if you have added a 4th month to this ROA to include missed days, it is still a 3-month ROA, okay? And then you're going to enter in the standard workday, calculate it, and here comes your ROA result, okay? So this is really how it equates to service credit. The ROA result is average days worked per month. So if you are reported monthly to the retirement system, you are going to be reported as 5.56 days worked each month, okay? Next slide, please. So this is the math behind that calculator, okay? While it isn't difficult, calculators are always easy to, you know, push too many buttons on. So folks here in our office actually use the ROA result calculator as well, but this shows you here your total hours divided by your months to get an average hours worked per month, and then you divide it by the standard workday to get an average days worked per month. This little blurb here, always round up even if you would round down using normal rounding rules. We are aware that you all know how to round, but our system just does it a little bit differently. We give you that small benefit and we always round up to the second decimal, second point after the decimal, okay? Second digit. Next slide, please. Now let's talk about timekeepers, okay? So this is a source of confusion for a lot of employers, so we try and break this down as easily as possible. Any official that uses the employer's timekeeping system, right? If you have regular employees that are part of a timekeeping system, and then you have appointed officials that also use that timekeeping system, they are timekeepers, okay? Usually we see that those types of systems track hours worked and keep track of paid accruals, which is like vacation and sick time. Any official that is paid hourly is considered a timekeeper because they are being reported based on actual time worked versus E&A folks that are being reported based on average days worked, okay? And then of course, timekeepers are no longer required to be listed. Next slide. So here is a few examples of acceptable timekeeping systems, right? Hard copy or paper timesheets, electronic timesheets, and punch cards. We still see punch cards often, actually. You know, so if your timekeeping system doesn't look like one of these 3 things, that's okay. This is just generally what we see. If you question whether your system is acceptable, feel free to give us a call. We could chat through it with you, but chances are it is, okay? So I wouldn't worry too much about that. If you have officials that are appointed and part of this timekeeping system, as long as it's being signed off by somebody, whether it's payroll or a supervisor, we can accept that. So anybody you question, just give us a ring and we can talk through that with you, okay? Next slide, please. Okay, so this is another really awesome tool, a calculator tool that we have on our website for reporting service credit. So this will really come in handy for payroll staff, or if you as an official really just want to see what your service credit is going to look like when your ROA is done, this is a great slide to come, or this is a great calculator to come to. Can you advance 4 clicks, please? Wonderful. So we're going to use the ROA results from our prior example of 5.56. And this official is going to be on a biweekly payroll frequency, okay? When you calculate it, the calculator gives you the breakdown of 2 payrolls and 3 payrolls, okay? If you are unfamiliar with biweekly payroll, right, some of you may be monthly or quarterly, it is divided out over 26 pay periods, right, because there's 26 pay periods for biweekly people. So it would calculate out to 5.14 days worked in a 2-pay month and 7.70 days worked in a 3-pay month, okay? So while it may seem a bit hard to wrap your head around with all of these numbers, if you are going to recertify to your ROA for a few terms of office, these numbers are going to remain constant, okay? So it's not as though you're going to have to use this every pay period. You know, you'll have an idea of what you need to report. You set up your payroll system based on these numbers, and then your payroll system is going to continue to report properly for you. When we receive a resolution, we are going to review the reporting and make sure it matches, and we'll get a little bit further into detail on that in a bit. But we will come to this calculator ourselves, input similar data, and make sure that we know for certain what the days worked should be. Okay. Next slide, please. So behind that calculator we just talked about is all of this math, okay? If you are a payroll person and you are familiar with this math, that is wonderful. Continue doing as you're doing, okay? If you are new to payroll and say, oh my goodness, I'm never gonna get this, please go back to that calculator, okay? Actually, one of our staff members created that calculator amazingly, and so has really taken all of this math and turned it into a couple of clicks for you. So like I said, our staff still use this calculator. It's very handy. Next slide, please. Adjustments. Adjustments are very common. We request adjustments pretty often, okay? So if we notice that the days that are reported to the retirement system and the ROA results are not matching up, we're going to send a letter to the employer's office, okay? If the employer determines that an error was made, the adjustments are going to be created and sent in, and then we will correct service credit. If the employer decides, you know what, there is no error, the information that was reported to the retirement system is accurate, we will need a detailed explanation, okay? And I'm going to be honest with you, there are very few reasons that we accept for not doing adjustments, okay? One of them would be if the prior reporting was based on a prior ROA and you can prove that, we will want to review that with you. Or if, for instance, you know, you had an official that was full-time and then all of a sudden, you know, their duties changed drastically because maybe they have a new contract with somebody that's helping them with similar duties that they used to do. Okay, then we would accept that explanation, but we may even require a bit more proof for that. Most often we see that the error is really an error and does need to be corrected. This really is no indication of, you know, you doing something wrong. You don't know what you don't know, and if you're not aware of the E&A procedures, you may not even know that you're reporting incorrectly. That's why we're here to help you. We pass no judgment. We just want to help you understand the process, correct the system, and then do it properly going forward. Okay, next slide, please. So what is being adjusted? On the left here, you see an entry from our EOR system, okay? And this person has an ROA result of 4.33. And then the other information there is what you would see in the data entry, all of their information that's listed on the resolution. And on the right-hand side, you have employee source data. This is what it looks like in our system when we review days worked and salary earned for your officials, okay? And here we have a snapshot of April of 2018 down to March of 2019, okay? And what you can see here is from April of 18 down to December of 18, this person was reported as 3.96 days per month. And then starting January of 19, they began being reported as 4 days. We can assume two different things here, that there was a prior ROA of 3.96 that was accurate, and that they now need to start being reported as 4.33. So we would request an adjustment from January of 19 to present. Or the employer just picked 3.96 out of a hat and reported what they wanted to report, which is very common. And so we then would ask for an adjustment for that entire time period, okay? So we kind of show you this because we don't know the ins and outs. We don't know if maybe that person had a prior ROA that we've never seen. So we do rely on the employer's office to review your records and let us know, okay? If what we've requested from you doesn't sound right, and you're not prepared to adjust the service, just let us know. Let's have a conversation and we can verify what should be done and what shouldn't be done, okay? We would hate to see you blindly adjust service credit and then say, hey, wait, there was a problem, and have to adjust it back, okay? So before you do all that hard work, just give us a ring, all right? Next slide, please. This is our adjustment form, okay? It is pretty detailed. It's not difficult, but it's detailed, all right? The first few columns are just typical information for your member, and then you have report period and days adjustment and days for period should be, okay? The last two columns are for salary. We do not ever require you to adjust salary, right? We don't care what you pay your officials. We only care what you report for service credit. The reason that these salary columns are here is because if we've requested these adjustments and you are reviewing the salary and the service, and then you realize there is a discrepancy with a certain month for salary, maybe they were over or under reported, or you accidentally added in salary that wasn't actually salary, you can use this form to adjust that 1 month, okay? But just know that we are not requiring you to adjust salary. I'm not going to really get into too much detail on how this form works. If there is a point in time in which you receive a letter from us requesting adjustments and you have this form to do, there are instructions on the back of this page, but we would be happy to walk you through the process, okay? There is also the ability to do online adjustments for some employers. Our office is not familiar with how to do that. That's our Employer Reporting Bureau, but they will certainly be able to help you. If you choose to do adjustments online, we can get you their contact information, or you can find it right on our website. Reach out to them and they will help you do that, okay? Next slide, please. So who is responsible for these tasks, okay? Every municipality is different, especially when you're talking about county, towns, villages, cities. Everybody does things a little bit differently. We do not dictate who does what, okay? So if you have one person that does it all for retirement system and E&A, that's fine. If you have people that, if you have more than one person for each duty, that's fine too, as long as the work is getting done. We do strongly advise that more than one person does this for some oversight, right? Having an extra set of eyes on things is always helpful. But typically we see that the clerk prepares the resolution, the board reviews the ROAs and the resolution and then passes it. And then the bookkeeper or payroll, they receive the resolution and they report days worked, okay? The only thing here that does not change is the board's role. The board must review the ROAs and the board must review the resolution prior to passing it, okay? Next slide, please. So these are some resources. The handouts have been provided to you, as well as a PDF copy of this presentation, okay? So review those handouts that were provided. That's all of the forms. It's a copy of the regulation. The regulation itself is actually a pretty quick read. It's 1 page front and back, but it's not long to read through, and it contains a lot of really helpful information. You may call our office at any time. That number that you see there is our secretary's line, okay? Currently, we are all working from home, as I'm sure many of you are. So when you call that number, you will leave a voicemail. Please feel free in the voicemail to state that you attended training and you have some additional questions. Or if you're a few months down the road and you just have a general question, just call in, leave a message, and actually Marcia is our office manager and she will field out those phone calls to all of the staff members. I say all of, there are 4 of us dedicated to elected and appointed officials of 3,000 employers. So we are a very busy, small little group, but we do our very best to reach back out to everybody within 24 to 48 hours, okay? If the phone call isn't your style and you'd rather, kind of write back and forth, feel free to email the Pension Integrity mailbox. Again, Marcia will be, she keeps an eye out for all of the emails coming through. If you want to add that you attended training in that email, Marcia can feel free to send those emails straight to me so that I kind of have an idea of what your questions might be already, okay? Visit our website. This is our main website, and when you click on the Employers tab and then click on Reporting Elected and Appointed Officials, you are going to find all of the calculators I talked about, the ROA template that we showed you. You are going to find all of the forms that you need for your members and and for your municipality. You're going to find some FAQs in there, and some additional resources that can really help you through this process. Okay, next slide, please. So that is all we have to show you today. I'm sure that there may be some questions coming in, and we would be happy to answer them. So Kate is going to help us with those questions if there are any questions in. If you haven't yet asked your question and you do have one, please drop that into the chat box so that we can help you out, okay?
Great, so far we have 2 questions in the questions panel. The first one is, what is the best number to use for the help desk?
That is an excellent question. Let me get that. Marcia, can you work on that for me? Wonderful. All right, we'll get back to that in one moment.
All right, and the next question is an appropriate time question. Legislators attend NYCRR conferences for 3 days. They network at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, take classes, talk to vendors in the evening. Would it be appropriate for them to log 12+ hours a day for that time?
Okay, so we're going to go back to kind of the training portion. If this official is going to be attending NYCRR each and every year, right, and they're going to be networking and doing their 12+ hours, they can add all of the hours that they work onto the ROA, but those hours will be divided out by the 12 months, and they will get that portion per month, okay? If you are only attending NYCRR just this year, you won't be doing it again next year, take it off altogether, and then extend your ROA. If you don't like the idea of this training being divided out by the 12 months, you can again remove it, and then those 3 days of time you would just include into the 4th month of actual working time, okay?
Great, and now we've had another question come in. What should a newly elected official do if they miss the first 180 days for submitting the ROA?
Okay, Marcia, you have that number?
Yes, I do have the telephone number for the help desk. So the best number for the, excuse me, best number for the help desk is 1-844-619-9614. And they also can be reached via email. If that's easier for you, that's retirementhealthdesk@osc.ny.gov.
Thank you so much, Marcia.
You're welcome.
So the question was if this appointed official has not done their ROA because of the 180, they haven't gotten it done within the 180 days. So I'm going to give this 2 different ways. If they started their ROA, but it's 180 days and they're not completed yet, they should be listed on a resolution as not submitted. And then a cover sheet can be included to state that the member is working on their ROA. We'll give them the appropriate amount of time before we reach out to them. But the reason we want them listed is because the longer we go without listing the official, the bigger the chance that they're going to be forgotten altogether and we're not going to get their information, okay? If the official has just not submitted an ROA at all and they're at the 180-day mark, you enter them as not submitted on the resolution, and then you'll let us know the official hasn't submitted yet. We will send a letter and start that process of requesting the ROA, okay?
Great, and at that point, that's all of the questions that have been submitted.
Okay, very good. So I want to bring up, this isn't part of our typical presentation, but I want to bring up the New York State pause, okay? If any of you are brand new as of January and you started working on your ROA, or maybe you didn't because you didn't know you had to, but then you come to March, middle of March, and all of a sudden there's no more working, right? So we started the New York State pause, so many of you probably missed out on time in your ROA. We are using the pause the same way we would use a vacation. Not that it was a vacation whatsoever, but we would treat it similarly, right? So you're going to extend your ROA. So if you got through January, February, and then up to the middle of March, when you come back to work, you're going to do a half a month, okay? Include that half a month in your ROA so that it's a full 3 working months. What I do suggest is you including that blank time in the ROA, because ROAs must be consecutive months. I would hate to see you have January, February, half of March, and then you came back in September and had half of September. And say 5 years down the road from now, our auditors come in and they say, wait, this isn't consecutive, and they forget all about New York State pause. I don't think we'll ever forget, but you want to have that explanation there for them. You can write right across those blank months, New York State pause, so that there's no question as to why there was a large break in time. Okay.
And
All right.
Tiffany, we had two
Yes.
more questions come in. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So the first one, if a DA has several ADAs, does each one have to do an ROA?
Okay, so ADAs we typically see as timekeepers, but if they are not, right, if they're not part of a timekeeping system, they don't punch in and out, their time cards are not signed off on by the DA, then yes, they do need to submit an ROA and be listed on a resolution. We do certainly have a few municipalities where they do have ADAs listed, okay? So that just kind of comes back to that timekeeping system. If you, whoever asked this question, if you are unsure if your ADAs are in an acceptable timekeeping system, give us a ring and we can talk through it.
Can I just elaborate on that?
Please do.
When you do an ROA, it's specific to the official, not the job title. Sometimes we'll have folks say, well, can I just use the old town clerk's ROA, or can I use this board member's ROA? Every individual has a different ROA, so it's not specific to the title, but specific to the individual.
That is a wonderful thing to bring up, you know, specifically because we have seen some board members that only attend meetings, and then some board members that, you know, well, they return all of the phone calls and all of the emails for the municipality. So Marcia is absolutely right. There is a very big chance that the individual ROAs will vary a lot. So it is important each individual have their own ROA.
All right, and I have two additional questions again.
Okay.
Are ROAs to be sent with resolution or simply kept on file for 30 years?
That is a wonderful question. Okay, the only time you are going to submit the ROA to our office is if we request it in writing or by phone. Okay, we give the employer, we ask the employer's office to really be the keepers of the ROAs. So when it's submitted to the town, or I'm sorry, to the clerk or to the board, right? The board and the clerk are calculating the ROA, listing the member on a resolution, passing, sending it in to us, reporting based on the ROA result, right? In the event that this member is listed as not submitted, we request the ROA. That would be a time where we get it. If we have to reject a resolution because of improper ROA results, we may request the ROA then. But generally, we do want the employer to keep the ROAs, calculate the ROAs, and tell us their findings. Okay.
All right, and then the last question that I have is, I have a legislator that is enrolled in the retirement system, had a break in service, and then when they came back, they do not want to complete ROA for a new term and does not want to participate in the New York State retirement system. Any suggestions or thoughts?
Okay, so that is something I would really like to help you dig into. So why don't you email the Pension Integrity mailbox with that member's information? Let me do some digging and then we can chat on the phone. This is something we've seen before, so we'll help you really find out the best way to move forward with this official. Okay.
And then that's the last question that I have in the queue.
Very good. Well, thank you all so much for being with us today. Marcia, thank you very much for coming as well. Kate, thank you for helping us, get through everything and get through the slides and the questions. You guys, please just feel free to call us or email us with any questions. There is no silly questions. We've heard them all. So even if you just want to verify something, give us a ring, send us an email, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
And a recording of this presentation will be available on NYSAC's website later today.
Very good.